And this is our first ETHTaipei, like first year. So I want to thank you guys for coming. Okay, and I am the MC for the DeFi track this morning, and I want to share some updates about ETHTaipei. So we created a YouTube channel last night, so you can already rewatch Vitalik's talk on YouTube. So can you guys open your YouTube channel? Right, we have the QR code here. Actually, you can just scan it. Nice. Right, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're gonna upload all of the talks into this channel, so you can check out later. And also, I want to thank the sponsors for helping us hosting this event, because this is the first year, and it wasn't easy to make this come true. So the sponsors include Gnosis Chain, Token, AutoPass, Tenderly, and more. And speaking of sponsors, here we are welcoming our first talk, the speaker of the first talk, which is from our title sponsor, Gnosis Chain. So that's welcome, Stefan, Piech.
Nothing more that I would.
Good morning, everyone. I'm happy to see a few people actually made it out at 10 a.m., so I assume all of you did not go to karaoke. But it's great that you're all here, and I want to take maybe the next 20 to 30 minutes talking about Gnosis and how we're building the future of DeFi and what we're actually doing. So a few things I'll touch on is why we have Gnosis and why it's so important that we're around. And I want to touch on things like decentralization, us building the Ethereum verse, and then deep dive into a few projects building on Gnosis, and that includes Hashi, that includes CowSwap, and also seeing how a lot of projects come together and helping to bring real-world assets onto crypto and onboarding new users this way. So let's jump right in. Why Gnosis? And it's three things, but if we start off, the first thing that really stands out, we're not just another EVM chain. We're actually compatible on the consensus layer, but with a lot cheaper gas than Ethereum or layer 2s, which really gives us an edge when we think about adoption. We are building what we call the Ethereum verse. So think about the IBC approach that Cosmos is having, but bringing it to Ethereum, which so far has been quite difficult to do, but we're working on that and make it possible to have other beacon chains connected in this interconnected reality. And the third point of why Gnosis is important and why we're around is we're highly decentralized. And I think most of you will have some centralized touch points in life and know about like centralized fails, and we talk about it a bit later on in this presentation, but decentralization is actually extremely important, and we are the third most decentralized chain if we consider Bitcoin the second most decentralized, if we just look at Ethereum and other smart contract chains, which really helps us to set us apart and have an edge. So let's take a step back and dive into a few of these points. Most chains are mainly equivalent on the execution layer level with Ethereum, if we talk about EVM compatibility. We are actually also compatible on the consensus layer, which is giving us a long-term edge due to like the network architecture we're deploying. And that means if we like put that into context, we are compatible with future Ethereum upgrades, ERP 8444, so proto-dank sharding and other EVM changes where layer 2s will struggle and have to like change the way they're operating. For us, it's quite easy to just keep upgrading and stay close to the Ethereum roadmap. We also are open peer-to-peer network. So we have a lot of node operators. I talk about decentralization in a point, but they help to run our Gnosis client softwares. So on the composite layer architecture we are utilizing, if we even dive into just the consensus layer, we can see that we have the same architecture and tooling that Ethereum is using. And we are very close to like the core Ethereum team, helping support initiatives there, and kickstarting, to be fair, a lot of initiatives on Gnosis chain. But there's one thing that is also setting us apart, and that is our dual token model. We have XDAI, a few of you have maybe already like used the faucet and got some free bubble tea earlier or yesterday. But we have XDAI as a stable token, which helps you to pay for your gas. And we have GNO, which is our proof of stake protection token, so used for the validators. And why this matters is if you would want to just open like a Bitcoin plus Lightning state channel at your birth and then close it again 80 years later when you're old and retire, Bitcoin would actually not have the bandwidth to do so. And we have congestion and other problems at other chains as well. So think about a very simple example. You want to bring real-world adoption to crypto. You want to not just have a few developers building very cool products, but have like your parents use it as well and see adoption. So if we want to have a credit card interaction and pay for coffee, I think if we have high congestions, you guys would not want to pay $100 gas to pay for your coffee. And we can see the same problem with other layer 2s where they already improved a lot in terms of scalability, but even there in a high congestion scenario, Arbitrum might still require a $1 gas because basically they have the same model as Ethereum and the problem there. If we look at Gnosis chain, thanks to our unique approach with having XDAI as a stable token for gas, it's a lot cheaper for us to operate. So it would be probably less than a cent even to pay for your coffee, which makes it a lot more feasible and also makes it a lot more feasible for DeFi because in the end, like, it really makes a difference on the operating costs that you have. The other point I want to touch on is the Ethereum verse, and ZK bridges are a true game changer. It's great to see what we've been able to do at Gnosis chain. We can now have very secure bridges, and this way we can run a full light client of Ethereum on Gnosis chain and vice versa. And with that we can proving consensus and proving that like this was a block that was signed by a majority of validators. This brings us to the Ethereum-verse approach to scaling, where you have the classic Cosmos Hub model with IBC, and us basically doing the same because now we have the secure bridge approach. So this idea combines the idea of like Cosmos with the idea of Ethereum. So running a light client has been the idea of IBC in essence, and it has been hard to implement this for Ethereum for a long time, but we can now have the same operability, which we call Ethereum verse, and change that use EVM beacon chains. And the other point is decentralization. And I used to think a lot about where to put my money and if it's a safe place. And I think just the question into the room, you don't have to answer, but just think about it. If you would trust any of these companies with your savings, like really lifetime savings, not just like a $50 deposit. And I think most of you would probably not. Most of you might not trust Silicon Valley Bank, a very centralized bank in the US. And there's a reason for that. And the reason is because they're very centralized. We don't know really what's going on behind closed doors. Frankly speaking, a lot of layer 2s are still very centralized and just multi-sigs in the back end. But it's important that we enable security, and especially for financial products, for life savings, for DeFi, we need security. And this security can be foundational with providing decentralization. So if we actually look at Gnosis, we have more than 100,000 validators, the second most number of validators actually around after Ethereum. And if you go to a website called D14N, you can actually also .info, you can actually also compare the Nakamoto scores for Ethereum versus Gnosis and see how we are also decentralized on a lot of different levels, which is important, that it's not just a lot of validators, but broad range of decentralization. So maybe tonight, if you go to the after party, you'll be well informed because you're here for the talk now, and you can tell everyone that Gnosis is building the most credibly neutral network. So that might be you later tonight. But let's jump into a few other things I want to touch on. One, Gnosis chain building a huge ecosystem of projects deploying on it, of projects being incubated through it and starting on it, especially on the DeFi side as well. One of them is CowSwap. So I'll touch on that a bit and give you an idea of what CowSwap is. To give you a broad sense, it's a fully permissionless MetaDex aggregator leveraging coincidence of ones. But what does that actually mean? So if we think about the classic model of automated market makers like Sushi or Uniswap, we can see that if you as a user would want to sell 50 ETH and another user would want to buy 50 ETH, they both interact with the AMM, they both pay a spread on that, and there's less efficiency. Like the state of Uniswap in the end did not change. It would still have the same capital in the LP pool, but actually two people being worse off interacting and paying for the spread. The reason why we have this model is, and the reason why we have MEV, to be fair, is because we took a lot of approaches from traditional finance. So in traditional finance, we want to achieve efficient markets. So incentivize traders to input information as fast as possible. And the way to do that is by rewarding like being fast. And we do that by having like MEV extraction. However, with crypto, it doesn't really apply because within crypto, we only get new information when we get a new block. So we get ordering within the block and people pay for that. But it doesn't really make sense having a price time priority, which is frankly why MEV exists. So the CowSwap approach is a bit different. Instead of having the initial AMM model, we actually have two things, and that is batch auctions and uniform clearing prices. The batch auctions come in when you think about the coincidence of ones. And the coincidence of ones basically just means you have person A wanting to sell X amount of token A and person B wanting to buy that. And you have the coincidence that they want to exchange these two tokens for maybe like a limit price. But so what we can do then, if we know there's people wanting to interact, that we can batch it up. So what CowSwap is doing, they initially batch transactions, and because it doesn't really matter having the time ranking for MEV, and we only get new information if there's a new block, we can then have uniform clearing prices to prevent MEV extraction here. So the goal is that within each single block, traders that trade the same token pair should, regardless of their ordering, all receive the same uniform clearing price. And then basically what happens is we have the protocol initially matching traders that want to like trade and like matching the trades. And only then we used to include someone called a solver. So a solver would basically help you to find it. It's a professional, and all of you can actually become solvers the same way you can become validators for Gnosis. It would help you then find the best execution price that you can not easily find if you just like want to swap on like MetaMask or Uniswap. So they're like professionals working on this. So in essence, we start aggregating multiple trades, intents together. So when using CowSwap, you don't initially trade, you sign a trade intent. And with these trade intents, then we can allow for more efficiency, and a solver can then apply certain rules that help the trade to happen at a very efficient execution price. So how does this actually look? I just wrote down a few steps, but think about it like this. You have your like order initially being set, or your trade intent. So these orders are completed and split into different batches. And each batch is sent to multiple solvers. A solver will try to find, and they're incentivized actually to find the best solution for you. A solver will try to find the best solution, and you have a jury, we call it a driver, that will help you to find the best solution, and only the best solution is then settled on-chain. Thinking about it, I think it already makes sense in a lot of aspects of what CowSwap is doing, but it's great to have this permissionless aggregator for DEXs and also the batching tool and front end, and all of you can actually trade there, but also build on top of it. The fair uniform clearing price makes it a fair place to interact and prevent MEV. So that is something to keep in mind. And with the solver and the decentralized element, you get the best execution possible that you would not get in other places. There's other things we're doing. So we also bring real-world adoption to crypto, and we're doing that in a few ways. Well, one, Safe is a product of ours where you can see it as like your self-sovereign bank and have a multi-sig that secures your crypto. But let's think about how the different things can like be interconnected. So we have another product called Monerium building on Gnosis chain. And Monerium is issuing euro-denominated stablecoins. But what they're doing, they have a SEPA, a SEPA license in Europe. So actually, as a crypto project, you can have your bank account, your self-sovereign bank account on Safe and pay your employees either in crypto or for your expenses and employees that are want to be paid on their bank account. You actually can interact with European bank accounts while now using Monerium, the EUR stablecoin. All of this is possible because we have projects like Karpathy providing liquidity. So Karpathy is providing liquidity right now in the Euro 3x curve pool, and with that making sure that there's plenty of liquidity. And this is important because it enables you to onboard to crypto to your bank account very easy without any headaches. And all of that being built on Gnosis chain in a like the second most decentralized chain, the only one that's taking it really, really serious. So making sure it's all in a safe place. But we can do more than that. And one thing we're doing right now is even onboarding more users. And with the XDAI structure we're having, it's quite easy and makes it quite easy for people to actually then use this credit card for real-world adoption and buying coffee. And we have credit card integration we're working on, and also bringing on real-world assets. So think about the credit card having a dual application function. It's your Visa applet, so you can have normal like Visa payments for it, but it links to your wallet. And maybe some transactions similar to like my Revolut card, you can just tap, and if it's under $30, it all goes through and it's fine. And if it's a big payment, you have to like use an authenticator, authenticate it in your wallet to make sure you actually want this transaction to happen. There's a lot of stuff happening in the back end from the processing, but all of that again is being built on Gnosis chain, making sure we bring decentralization to these elements that help users to stay safe. And if you take it one step further and think about real-world adoption and real-world assets, frankly, we have projects like Back.fi that are building on Gnosis and helping integrate real-world assets. So with all of this being interconnected with Safe, Monerium, Gnosis chain, or credit card, Gnosis Pay coming soon, and Back, think about having your credit card, that's your hard wallet. You can pay for it. You know it's safe because it's a multi-sig in the end, if you want it to be. And you can make sure all your transactions or your payments can be done in euro. You can pay like your employers with it in the end. But you can also dollar cost average into Ethereum every month or into index funds. So you never actually have to leave the system. And this is something my parents can do. Like they understand the concept of dollar cost averaging. I think that's where it slightly ends, but it's really easy for them to just know they have a credit card. It's saved by having a blockchain being an underlying layer, and you don't have to like rely on a centralized bank like Silicon Valley Bank, and make sure you can dollar cost average into your savings. There's other projects we're building. The last one I want to touch on is Hashi. A lot of you might have heard about it before if you've been to the hackathon because there has been a bounty for it. But it's a pretty cool project. And starting off with the problem we're facing is 2 billion in bridges, $2 billion US dollars were stolen bridges in 2022, which is a huge amount. And if you looked at the WEC leadership board, like 4 out of the 5 biggest hacks have been within bridges. So it's quite important to think about security. But the problem we have is like no bridge is 100% secure. You cannot really trust just one single bridge, which is where Hashi is coming in. So knowing that all these bridge designs have different trade-offs in terms of cost, security, auditability, all these kinds of things, we want to make sure we create a product that's a lot safer. And it's much more secure if you require messages to be validated by multiple independent mechanisms rather than just one. So rather than just relying on one single bridge, you rely on multiple bridges. One thing, or maybe before talking about design principles, one thing we're doing is we have a setup called YHO. So that's a redundant array for independent hash oracles. And that helps you to like go through this process. And for all of you who are developers, it's quite cool because you can actually build on top of Hashi. So you can query it, but you can also allow users to build, or we allow users to build on Hashi and have custom Oracle adopter contracts. So really figuring out for yourself how you can like leverage it. So if you're a developer, it's a cool place to build on and really solving a huge issue. On the design principles, it's a few to consider. Let me just show you all at the same time. But we believe that the block header abstraction layer is probably the best for standardization aggregation. Of course, there's some government elements to consider, but that's where we want to like standardize. So we really standardize on the lowest level in the terms of design of Hashi, and also allowing for diversification of chains of bridges. Of course, frankly, there could be better diversification if we think about like bridges using similar mechanisms. But what we are doing is we have security over latency. So it might not be the fastest bridge, but I'm a paranoid person. I rather be safe that my money is going through my bridge and comes out at the other side and is not being lost or drained. And security is, from my understanding, a lot better than having latency. But that's something, if you guys have a cool idea, figuring out how we can like combine those two and even solve it. There's a lot of components that come into play, and we'll share the slides afterwards, I think. So it's easier for you to like think about the design on how Hashi actually works. But I think the key takeaway for all of us is we want to bring real-world adoption to crypto. We want to be safe when we interact with crypto. We want to do it in a decentralized way and not having a centralized failure point. That could be a layer 2 multisig that we don't know. Like, we all have high hopes that like everyone is moving in the right direction, but you have to like have trust in people. For us, we rely heavily on decentralization and want to build a very decentralized future. So all of you can actually become home validators if you want to. It's quite easy. You just need one GNO. You can ask us for information later, but there's a lot of documentation on the website. You can join the Gnosis ecosystem and interact with a few of the protocols that we've built, like HouseSwap, to really make sure you get the best execution and build your projects on Gnosis chain. If you're in any kind of like crypto space, I think DeFi is a cool space considering the design of XDAI. But yeah, that's my talk. For any of you who are sticking around a bit longer, we have a free boba tea later, and we have a free NFT that you get with it. So you can scan the QR code, get free boba, get a very nice NFT and collect that. Yeah.
All right, boba tea. So it's time to take questions. Quick recap of Gnosis Chain's advantages. It's highly decentralized, it's EVM based, and it closely follows up Ethereum roadmap. So if you have any questions, you can raise your hands now. We have
You can also
time.
Yeah, you can also come by our stand later and talk
Yes.
to us if you want to learn more about some of the projects,
You
how
take
to
the-
build on Hashi, and learn more about us.
All right. Leo goes first. Can you try again the mic? Can you move it closer?
So you ask about security mechanisms for Hashi, right? Yeah, so I'm actually not with the Hashi team, so I cannot give you the best answer. If you give me a Telegram later, I can put you in contact with the right person. If you think about the security element, it is relying on basically abstracting the idea of not just relying on one bridge, but relying on multiple bridges. So on the design side, it's then really having this redundant array of independent hash oracles and combining them and having them being validated by multiple mechanisms. I'm not too sure on like exactly the detail of the mechanisms, but I can tell you after this talk.
So you said that Gnosis chain is both very decentralized, like it's easy to run a validator, and also very cheap, so it has very high throughput. Like, how is this possible? Wouldn't this mean that you have a huge state bloat, and like how is this trade-off solved?
So the question of how we run a lot of validators but still be able to have such a low gas. Well, on the validator side, the validators are rewarded with GNO, right? So GNO and XDAI are not linked in that sense. So XDAI is like independent and being used for gas, and GNO is being rewarded for validators and has utilities and like government power and staking rewards and things like that.
But I mean, if you run a validator, it means you run like a node with all the state of the blockchain, right? Or how do you enable this to be like still easy and like for anyone on a normal computer to run this while still having this massive throughput?
I have to double check with you. I'll grab you after this talk and let you know. But I don't want to like tell you anything that's wrong. So let's take it off stage.
I think that guy. Okay, same question. Okay. No, he says the same question, so it's okay. All right. Last question. Anyone? Okay, so let's give another round of applause to Stefan.
Thank you, guys.
And don't forget.